Welcome here to the Gamma Project. My name is Justin McGuire. I'm here with Ben Cornish, all the way from Bristol. You guys are based on, aren't you?
Bristol, UK.
How's
Yeah,
it going, Ben?
Bristol, UK. Yeah, nice and cold, mate. Nice and cold, but yeah, it's good. I'm excited to start the process just.
Fantastic. You guys just come on board, and I'm so looking forward to next year's competitive season. I think we're going to put you guys all on the map. You guys are going to
Yeah.
really blow the hell out of past year's goals and accomplishments, and this gets you to a whole new level. Ben, I think that we discussed a couple of things in terms of starting out the protocol, and you guys are starting out the first month of almost what I call a preparatory phase toward being able to engage better muscle contraction. So I'll leave the floor to you, Ben. Are there any questions that you may have regarding the type of training, the type of diet, and the logic behind the whole routine to start out with? Because generally out there, if you look at most training protocols, they throw guys deep in head first, right, into high amounts of volume of training, heavy lifting, but don't necessarily take into account like where their starting point is. So any questions you may have, Ben, fire away.
I mean, time under tension, I've sort of like dabbled with in the past, but I've always found that I struggle to. I feel like I've got like not a strong enough nervous system to sort of train like that. So I've sort of like resorted back in recent years, to numbers, like reps and what have you. And but it'll be maybe this is the way to go in terms of improving that CNS. So I can actually train this way. It's just, I tried MI40, and it was even with the lightest of weights, it was so tough to maintain that tempo and over 40 seconds and hit those numbers in the latter end of my my sessions. So but we'll see.
Well, I think it's good that you brought that up. A lot of time and attention is very valuable to engage how people are progressing, because there's only one common variable to movement, and that's time. So you can increase momentum, you can increase inertia, and that can all alter how a repetition is delivered. But the one thing that can't really be altered to the total amount of exposure is time. So when we have time and attention, we have a deemed physiological response we'll be able to achieve out of exerting our body to that time and attention. But like you said, it's quite hard for a lot of people that might have had everything from like sleep disorders to blood sugar management problems to digestive issues, not to mention many other ailments, to actually get that control or the link from the CNS to the PNS throughout the body to orchestrate the best type of response for control, to lengthen muscle and to shorten the muscle. So the biggest reason why I put you guys under the initial protocol is firstly to solve issues that you may have within the gut itself, to help you to absorb nutrients more effectively. And in doing so, it will help you to control your stress a hell of a lot more. So your sleep will be improved, your bowel movements will be improved. Initially, you'll go through a period of detoxification, which you may feel a little bit disassociated, which is very normal. But after about 10 days into this first initial phase of prep, you'll see that your contraction will be smoother. It won't feel like you're trying to fight gravity. It'll feel like you'll be able to control movement with gravity, engaging the right attention variable. So this is why setting your body in a position to absorb nutrients more effectively is so vitally important. But it's all about jumping head first. Like if you jump head first into a program and you're just worried about hitting repetitions within a time and attention, a lot of the time you either rush a repetition or you go slow with a repetition, and you don't quite get that right amount of proprioception of control of eccentric and concentric load. So what the Gamma Project does says, okay, great, you know what, I'm going to give you 40 seconds of attention. This is the deemed tempo. But if you don't hit that tempo and you are, say, for example, only able to do 4 reps and not 8 reps in the deemed time, that's fine, because that's how your nervous system will adapt to a greater response toward control in the long run. But at the same time, there's a lot of stretching in the first month, there's a lot of yoga, a lot of stretching, a lot of very basic movements, just like walking, hiking, to be incorporated into the protocol. Not huge primal flow patterns and all this, although they have warrant their benefit. If you disassociate it and you try and engage these patterns, more often than not, you're going to put yourself 2 steps backward, because your body, even if you gauge the movement at the end of the session, so now you'll be able to do a leopard crawl properly at the end of the session, or whatever, scorpion crawl, all these crazy movements that they put together. It doesn't mean that you're going to be able to remember it next time around, unless your central nervous system is positioned in such a way that it's going to allow, on a subconscious level, for programming to be set in. And in order for that to be achieved, we need to reduce the amount of tension or tone to tissue that's overly worked, which is normally the case of people that have done competitions or strenuous training for a long period of time. And the one way we do that is through stretching, through the external stimulus, but the internal stimulus is getting your gut right, getting your body in a most healthiest immune state possible with the reduced amount of inflammation as possible as well. So this is why we're going to, for the first month, you're doing 2 hours of weight training a week, 4 half-an-hour sessions. The loads are light. Like, you shouldn't feel like you're exerting yourself in terms of like lifting heavy. It should be easy for you to be able to lift the load. If you're doing 100 kilos on a squat for 10 reps, you shouldn't be doing more than 60 kilos on a squat for 10 reps in this first phase. It's not about chasing off the numbers of the weight. It's just about resetting control and proprioception, and also allowing that your catecholamines, or your stress hormone released during the session, is optimized.
Okay. Thanks, man. That's good. At least you know what you're doing. Then I'll follow and trust the process.
You know what? That's the thing. If you don't have a plan of action, like, you can have the best training program in the world, but the reason why I asked you guys, Ben, before I started with you guys, there were quite a few forms I asked you guys to fill in before I gave you any advice, right?
Yeah.
Those forms, can you inform the viewers, like, in terms of what the detail was in those forms?
Yeah, it asked quite a few questions in terms of gut related questions, which I liked straight away, because I feel like I've actually got noticeable gut problems, struggle with a bit of IBS, and there's a few questions asking, do I feel tired at certain times of the day? One being in the afternoon. I do feel tired in the afternoons, which was good to even just be asked, because it must mean something.
Sure does.
So it goes into, it went into quite a few little niche questions, which I thought were good, because obviously these little things, I didn't even know it meant anything. I just thought I had my lunch and I was getting some sort of like hypoglycemic reaction or something, but if you're asking if it's a certain time of day, I do struggle in the afternoons at work. I could fall asleep, that's so little things like that.
What was your answer to the question of whether you get more sugar or salt cravings?
It was sugar cravings. So I've got a sweet tooth, and I'll crave sugar more than salt every day of the week, as far as I can remember.
And there's a logic behind that question, actually, Ben. So people that generally crave a lot of sugar, it's a possible symptom, 9 times out of 10 in my experience, that your release of stress hormone is far beyond a natural normal control, or where it should be. And the reason why your body is releasing so much stress hormone, to give a background, what stress hormone does, it energizes our bodies because it allows us to produce ATP. Right? So when we're training, we release stress hormone so that we can generate ATP for muscle contraction and for movement, in essence. So if you think about a scenario where we would be wild animals, before technology, and when we're living back in the cave, we would have our environment, which we go, hunting animals and gathering berries and fruits and veggies and what have you. And we would be pretty calm, except for when we were doing the hunt, we would be more dialed in. Our periphery would be a bit more squared off, and we'd be more tunnel vision, focusing on the kill. And the same thing would happen is if we were being attacked by a lion or attacked by a wolf up in Europe, then, you know, all of a sudden your gap for exit is narrowed to get out of the situation. So the problem is, in the modern day world, we are bombarded with so much stimulus that causes this type of effect. So we live in this hole, and because we live in this hole, the amount of stress hormone being released to keep us in that hole is extremely high. It's way higher than our bodies would naturally like it to be. And with elevated stress hormone, it affects your blood sugar control. And when your blood sugar is all over the shop and it's going high and low, and you're going to points of hyper and then hypoglycemia, all of a sudden your body's like, okay, I got to regulate this somehow. Let's release some stress hormone to release some glucose from the glycogen stores in our bodies to keep things more level so the brain doesn't feel as overwhelmed. That being said, the only thing that can help elevated levels of stress hormone are elevated levels of insulin. And the one way we get insulin up as quickly as possible is sugar. That's why we crave sugar, refined sugar in particular, to try and almost modulate our stress hormone that's being bombarded through unnatural means in the modern day world. So a simple question like, do you crave more sugar or more salt, can give us a clear understanding of if you have an overabundance of stress hormone in the body, or if possibly you have a thyroid issue. So those who crave a lot more salt than sugar generally have underactive adrenal health, right? The adrenals aren't as responsive as they should be. And it's normally seen after years and years of being overactive. So scenario, with a guy in their 20s, right, living in a corporate world, all of a sudden he goes into his new job and works 12, 14-hour days. He wakes up in the morning and he used to have breakfast when he was in his days of studying. Now all of a sudden he's rushed. Forgets his breakfast, drinks a cup of coffee to get energy, goes to work, may snack on 1 or 2 sandwiches during the course of the day, gets back home, has a pizza before going to bed. Right? Quite a common scenario.
Yeah.
Those type of individuals, up until maybe about their 40s, maybe 50s, they're the kind of guys that would crave sugar and alcohol.
Right.
When they get to their 40s or 50s, they've had 2 to 3 decades of complete exposure or overexposure to stress hormone to try and energize them instead of having good nutrition, good nutrients, balanced amount of hydration, very important, going through their body. So the adrenals say, you know what, fucking hell, sorry for my friends, they say, oh, we're tired, like we're really tired. And another thing about it is overactive adrenals also reduce the activity of our thyroid, because the thyroid regulates metabolism. But if you have a load of fire burning a lot of wood, you don't want to fuel that fire anymore. So the body says, okay, cool, that fire is damn hot. Let's just reduce the amount of heat to that fire. And how it does that is lowering thyroid function. You initially get a thyroid spike, and then you have a thyroid lower down. Now, as that starts to happen over the years and you get more metabolic damage, all of a sudden, your adrenals say, whoa, I can't handle this. And you can't. Hi, Ben. You there? Yeah, sorry about that. Lightning going on over here, so it just disrupted the signal there for a second.
Yeah, I don't know what happened, mate.
So your system's bombarded with stress for many years, and all of a sudden, like, adrenals aren't as responsive as they should be, and neither is your catecholamine control or release of it. So sugar, sodium, is highly excitatory to the body. So when you crave a lot of, salt, not sugar. When you crave a lot of salt instead of sugar, it's to stimulate a stress response. So generally, when you ask a question of, do you crave more sugar or more salt, it just gives you an insight as to how that person's adrenal health might be in that given day of question or that given period of question. So at the moment, you're craving a lot of sugar, which means that you're probably releasing quite a lot of catecholamines, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because it tells me that the adrenals are working. At least they're working. So it might be overworking, but they're still working. So we can reverse the negative effect that overactive adrenals may currently be having by resetting gut health. Bacteria balance has a major effect on the stress hormone release and nutrient absorption. More nutrients, better hydration, less need for stress hormone. So a question like that can really give you a lot of insight. And that's what comes down to your gut. And everything from your sleep cycles and how often you're waking up in the evening to your stool cycles and how often you're going to the loo every day. It all has a tie-in to how your bacteria and your digestive system is affecting your stress hormones and your endocrine system.
You may be called in to work maybe a little bit harder with me. My job is shift work, so we're going to be fighting a harder battle. I mean, as of February coming up, they're actually putting me onto a 3-shift pattern, which means I'm working one set of nights every 3 weeks. So it'll be really valuable for me to stay on top, or at least trying to counteract the ill effects of that, as opposed to 99.9% of people that do work shifts who are just damaged.
But it is a combatable scenario. There are things we'll put into place. So this is why it's so important that right now, whilst you're not doing that, to get your gut as healthy as possible, so that when I do give you certain adaptogens or minerals or vitamins or phytonutrients, that they will actually have an effect on controlling the stress level as best as you can when your sleep cycle isn't on point.
Yeah, that's good. Because I looked for a career change, to be honest, but in the meantime, I'm gonna have to do what they tell me to do. They pay me my wages. So
of course. And the thing is, there's we have to sometimes do what we have to do, but we can do it in such a better way. We can go about getting so much of a better outcome to our obligations that we may have in life. But it's just a question of balancing things out in terms of your endocrinology or your biochemistry toward a more healthier effect to stress control and management.
Yeah, it's something that I'm motivated for. I mean, I've done preps, but which is a case of, I said to you on text the other day, get in shape by any means, sort of like train like a nutter, and diet right down, calories restricted. It would be nice to do it from a more standpoint. It's probably something that I need, because I can feel the symptoms of.
Ben, it's something that everyone, this economics approach to life, where more is better, is absolutely diabolical when it comes to the body. Like, if you just only people that can really sustain high volumes of training are people in the early years. Like, as we get older, as we get into our 30s and we get into our 40s and years, decades thereafter, it's not sustainable, firstly, and it's also not necessary. It really isn't necessary. If you put in the right work within the right environment, 70% effort will give you 100% return.
Yeah.
It's not the quantity, but rather the quality behind how to do something. Create the effort or put the effort to. And if you try to do too hard, it's like anything. If you go to what you do for, I'm not sure, what do you do for a living, Ben?
I'm a machine operator in a cardboard factory. So
okay, so
nice and exciting.
Can you imagine, like, if you were trying to get out double the amount of production of cardboard items, right? And you were hammering the machine as fast as you could. What's the likelihood that you would injure yourself? What's the likelihood that the product wouldn't be generated to less of a quality?
It's a conversation that occurs. It almost seems like my workplace, but yeah, that's exactly what it is, mate. So they want the numbers, but then quality comes down. So it's the universal rule, really.
It's a chaotic rule, because the only thing that ends up having to be done after rushing something is that you have to do it over again, or you have to produce more of it to get the exact same result. So let's do less and get more, but let's just do it this clever way. So in a way we can do the clever way is by just listening to the body through objective parameters of assessment and subjective analysis of how you're feeling. And we try and pair those off together. It's like things from depression to anxiety to all these ailments, psychological ailments, they all come down to some type of rational, objective understanding as to why a person would get into that state. And it took me many years to understand it myself, because I also struggled with those symptoms for many, many years. And there's one big underlying factor. It's firstly, you need to slow down enough to be able to understand that you don't have to rush, and that stress comes through rushing a process. Rushing eating your food, rushing the weight, getting it off your chest as fast as you can, but pounding on more weight, or rushing the squat and bouncing out of that squat position where it's actually not going to give you much of a benefit to muscular growth, rather joint destruction, all right, in a long period of time. And so this is the thing, it's about the quality approach. This is why time and attention is so effective. Like the time and attention, even though if people think when I lift 10 reps, right? I have this conversation all the time. You go to the local gym and some young guy, 21, 22, he's doing a squat and he's squatting 4 plates a side. And he says, I can do 10 reps at 180. By the time it takes him to do 1 rep, it's probably 2 seconds, if at best, right? And like a repetition bracket for 10 reps generally should be 4:10 tempo. So it should take about 5 seconds. At times, you could take 4 seconds if you're going for sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, but for myofibrillar breakdown, you want to generally a little bit longer eccentric load. So generally a 5 seconds to complete 1 rep. This guy's doing it in 2 seconds, and he thinks he's getting stronger. He's not. The only thing he's able to do is engage the forces of momentum to his advantage, but to the detriment of his structure later in his life. And I know this firsthand because I was one of those guys. I was a young guy in there lifting 300 kilos at one stage and squatting 200 kilos at one stage, but terrible. And my body's not designed for squats. I love squats. I do them, but I'm not structurally the strongest with that exercise. But I wanted to, regardless of the speed and the technique. And it just comes down to one outcome, and that's destruction, complete destruction. And the purpose of going through training or an exercise regime is to better your life, not to worsen it.
Yeah.
There's nothing that worsens your life than pain. And pain can be internal and external.
Definitely. Yeah. For sure.
Great. Ben, so are you looking forward now to starting up the first phase? Any other questions you have of concern or any issues that you're not too certain of? It's quite a lot to be taken in. But
yeah, it is a lot to be taken in right now. I'm looking forward to just getting going. Really am. And, motivated. So, yeah, I can't think off the top of my head any more questions, just to be honest.
That's fine.
I'm sure I'll put them over to you if I can.
Just remember one thing, accountability is key. So communication between you and myself is vital. So, I answer all your WhatsApp questions within 24 hours that you ask them. So feel free. Like if you're not sure of anything, ask, because that's the only way you're going to be able to keep on track and keep motivated as much as you are now by getting the answers to the questions which you may have in the long run. So your questions you have today will be completely different to the questions you'll have in a month, but it's important to ask those questions to get the result and the clarity to keep going forward.
Yep.
All right.
Good. Yeah.
I'm looking forward to working with you. And here's to your Gamma project. Guys out there, stay tuned. We're going to be posting up Ben, Tom, and Tommy's pictures over the course of the next year, showing you guys how these guys are progressing. We're going to do a lot more video casts of these guys as the questions develop. I'm sure we'll be able to throw a lot more knowledge bombs out there to educate everybody toward a better strategy of looking good and, more importantly, feeling good. All right. Take care. Bye, man.
Yes. Take care. Bye.